Today it was Brian and Radonna featured in the, like Sonny and Cher, Donnie and Marie. We have Brian and Radonna. It's basically the same thing. Well, back in 1967, expert testimony was given in the U.S. Senate, and they said that with all of the new time and labor-saving technology that was coming out in that era, it was going to change the way Americans work and live. They said that within 30 years, people would be working on average 22 hours a week, 32 weeks a year, and most people would be retired by age 40. In 1967, they said the #1 challenge facing people in the new millennium would be what to do with all of their excess time. I don't know about you, but that is not my primary challenge in life today, what to do with all my excess time. It was also during the 60s that a new kind of restaurant became popular in American culture. It was a restaurant that for the first time in human history sold food not on the quality, the basis of its quality or taste or even the price, but rather on the speed at which it was served. And they coined a phrase for these restaurants, and we call them now fast food. Not good food, but fast food. But you know, even with fast food restaurants, you still had to park the car, you had to get out, you had to walk all the way inside, and so they invented the drive-through, so families could eat in minivans, just as God intended. Well, today we're going to talk about time and kind of time management, but in a bigger picture kind of way. Glad you're here for week 2 in our mini-series, Life Alignment. Now, I gave an assignment this week, and that was to create a list in descending order of the top 5 priorities in your life. And if you didn't do it, or if you didn't bring it, or whatever, you can still flip your announcement sheet over and write some stuff down if you want to. And I would bet that if you did this, that a lot of your lists probably looked sort of like this. Because we're doing this in church, you had to put God first, right? And then you might have put family, or your career, or finances, or maybe in the situation you're in right now, it might be inner peace, or it might be travel, or it might be education. But if we're honest about it, there is often a pretty big disconnect between what we say are the most important things in our lives and how we actually live our lives every day. We all want, but find it hard to achieve, you know, having connection, having those things reflect what we put down on a piece of paper, but it's hard. It doesn't always happen. Now, last week I mentioned if someone just followed you around for a week and they just observed your life, what you did, you know, how consistent would that be with what you would write down on your list of top 5 priorities? So this series is not about cars, it's not about tires, but it's about having life alignment, where the majority of your time and energy go to living out what you say and what you want to be the most important things to you. And last week we compared life to being like a car out on the highway. And you know, when you get out there on the highway, there are a lot of cars going really fast. They're swerving in and out of traffic. That could be me, probably not, but it could be. But there's a lot of stress, there's a lot of frustration out there on the highway of life. And I encourage you to do 3 different things. Number 1, pull over and stop. Just slowing down a little bit is probably not going to make a substantial enough difference. Occasionally you have to pull over and stop. And when you do, number 2, pop the hood and look inside. Take an honest look at how you're living your life and like the kind of person you're becoming over time. It's not just what you do, but it's also who are you becoming? Are you becoming the kind of person that you want to be over time? So you pop the hood, you look inside, and then you make a decision to change lanes. A conscious choice to move from the fast lane of life into the slower lane. Last week we looked at Ephesians 5:15 that says, be very careful how you live, not as unwise, but as wise. And there's also Proverbs 14:8 that says, the wise give thought to their ways. In other words, they don't just go through the motions of life. They don't just automatically do what everyone around them is doing. Instead, they are more intentional. They're purposeful about their lives. And here's a real sobering verse from James 4:14. It says, what is your life? It is like a mist that appears for a little while and then vanishes. And every person here over the age of, say, 50 or so will testify to the fact that the years go by very fast. You know, very, very fast. And so you got to make your time count. And that requires, I think, some life alignment. So that how you live your life every day is consistent with and is a reflection of and a fulfillment of your top 5 priorities list. With that in mind, I want to talk about 3 things quickly that prevent us from living out our lives in the way that we want to. And I'm calling them the hazies, the lazies, and the crazies. Now, most of us have probably been to Los Angeles before, and we've seen the haze that's nearly always, it just covers the whole area. And the hazies is sort of a person who's vague and fuzzy about what their main priorities in life are or should be. The word priority means that which takes precedent over other things. So your priorities are those things or those people that take precedent over, that are more important than other things. And as I mentioned last week, it's amazing when you stop and think about it. People will spend hours and hours planning an upcoming vacation. People in business will spend weeks and even months putting together a 5-year strategic plan and so forth. And yet those same sharp, intelligent people will spend little or no time thinking about who they're becoming over time and what they want their life to count for and what they want it to mean. You know, I think a lot of us kind of row our boats so fast that we forget to occasionally stop rowing to figure out if we're headed in the right direction. And so in this series, I'm kind of asking you to step back, stop a little bit, put the oars in the boat for just a moment, and look around. Life's going by pretty fast. And you're probably expending a lot of energy and a lot of effort. And for what? What of real lasting importance is being accomplished by all the busyness? A lot of people are very hazy about that. The lazies, that's another condition that will certainly keep people from living out their priorities. It's like the guy sitting in his lazy boy recliner with a remote in one hand, his cell phone in the other hand, and he speed dials Domino's for pizza and says, hey, I left the front door open, just bring it in when you get here. That's the lazies right there. It's the procrastination monster that gets a lot of people. Now, for some of us, procrastination is a minor problem that only affects us in certain areas of our lives sometimes. For others, procrastination is a major problem, and it cuts right to the heart of living out our priorities. And then third are what you might call the crazies. Maybe you've seen those people that are like acrobats and they have these plates that they're spinning on like rods or poles, right? And they have like 8 or 10 of them, and they're running back and forth, right? Keeping that one spinning, that one's about to go, and then they run back and forth. Life can feel a lot like that sometimes. It's just like you're just trying to run around and keep everything propped up and going. Your job, your career. Some of us are married, and that takes time to have a good marriage. Kids, grandkids, some of us are in school. We need health and exercise in order, we've got to keep that plate going. And then there's laundry to do, bills to pay, a house to clean. All of us have a church plate that we keep spinning. We have hobbies, we have relatives, we have friends, we have occasional difficulties in life that just crop up and are super annoying, but they require time and attention. And sometimes it feels like our lives are just reduced to running back and forth all over the place in an attempt to just keep everything going. So there are the hazies, people who just don't stop and give much thought to how they're living their lives. There are the lazies, people who may even think about priorities occasionally, but due to procrastination, they kind of never really get around to implementing all that in their life. And then there are the crazies, people who are stuck on the treadmill of busyness where they don't really have time or energy to think about issues like, what's the real meaning of all this nonstop madness? Someone has aptly labeled this hurry sickness. Now, it's a kind of a disease. Here's how to know if you have this disease of hurry sickness. When you pull up toward a stoplight and there are 2 lanes and 1 car in each lane, if you have this sickness, you look at each car and you start calculating depending on the make and model of the car, what it looks like and so forth, which one is going to pull away from the intersection first? Am I the only person who ever does this? How young the person is, if it, you know, of course, if it's a big truck or something like that, you're not going to get, you know, you figure that out. And then that's the one you get in, right? Or you go to the grocery store, and I've used this analogy before, but you've done all your shopping, and you go to the checkout lines, and then you look at how many people are in each line, and then you look at how much is in each person's cart, right? If it's real full, not getting in that line for sure. And if you're really sick, you try to keep track. You look at who would have been you if you had gotten the other line. Who would have been you? And then if you go through the lines and they get out first, you're just like, you're really mad because you lost. They're out there, they're living life, and you're still stuck in the line. And I think if we had a mass confession, a lot of us would admit to occasionally having, you know, kind of that hurry sickness. Well, one option is to just walk away from it all. They say for 20 or 25 years now, around 100,000 people, this is from an article in the Los Angeles Times, this phenomenon that's taking place in the United States, about 100,000 professionals every year, businessmen, businesswomen, get burned out and worn out, and they finally just drop out. Bankers, attorneys, judges, executives who one day decide they just don't want to do it anymore. They can't take it anymore, and they just drop out of sight. They don't tell anybody. They don't leave a forwarding address. They cleaned out their bank accounts. They left their families. In some cases, they change their names, and they move away, sometimes to a different country. They take a low-profile, low-demanding job. They just completely drop out of the American rat race. Well, there's got to be a better way to handle it than that, right? There is. But it's not, I won't say that it's super easy. Now, several years ago, I did a series called How to Win the Game of Life. And here were the 6 main areas of life that we talked about. And the idea is that if you're doing well in each of those areas, like if spiritually, if you say, yeah, right now I'm about an 8 or a 7, or if you say relationally, I'm about a 6 or 7, or if you say in your job, vocationally or emotionally, financially, if your numbers are all 6, 7, 8, 9, your life is going really well. But if you look up and most or half of your numbers are in 3, 4, stuff like that, things are not going as well. And so the idea is that to get all of these things kind of going in the right direction at the same time. That's not easy to do. And I want to apply that idea to an analogy you probably heard before, but it's about the big rocks theory. You probably heard this, but here's how it goes. You have 3 elements that go into a jar, and that jar represents your life. All right? The first of the elements is sand. It's little grains of sand, and it represents the little details of your life. Things you have to do, picking out what you're going to wear in the morning, making the bed, doing the dishes, paying the bills, driving to work and back, running errands. It's just things that they're necessary, most of them, but they're small things. The next is kind of a medium-sized rocks or pebbles. And these are bigger things, more important, like sleeping or eating or taking care of your house or the cars, relatives, sports, travel, things like that. And then are the big rocks. And they represent the most important aspects of your life. As we said earlier, spiritual, relational, physical or health, career, so on and so forth. And you see, on the left is how most people do their lives. Is that they get busy with all the routine, mundane things of life and necessary parts of life, but then they wind up without having enough room or time or capacity for the big rocks to get in, the things that are truly important in their lives. The much better way is to first make sure the big rocks get in there. That is the spiritual, the physical, the emotional, so forth. Make sure that you focus on those. Establish those in your life. Nail those down. Then you put in the smaller rocks, things that are necessary, things you have to do. And then finally, the details, the sand, the lesser important thing. And because you put in the big rocks first, then the smaller pebbles and the sand will all just kind of fall in and fit in around the big rocks. And this is a little bit of what I think Ephesians 5:15 might be alluding to. Be smart. Be wise in how you live your life. And also a part of that wisdom is to consider these big rock areas of your life in the context of what stage or what era or what chapter of life you're in right now. Because these things, the amount of time each of these areas need is kind of dependent on what stage or era of life. For instance, if you're retired, well then that vocational area, you don't have to devote any time to that, right? So that frees you up to look at some other areas. If you're still really young, well then the health issue may not be as big of a concern right now. Or if your finances are really good, or maybe they're just set. Maybe they're not that great, but they're set. They're consistent. It's the same thing. It's on autopilot, and it's going to be that way, for the rest of your life. So you don't have to really focus too much on that one for now. And any of those things that you are freed up from, then that gives you extra time and energy and focus to work on the ones that are still super important. Now, I know that some people don't really like getting all worked up about, how they live their life or what they do with their time. And they don't think in terms of, this is my one and only life. I need to make it count. A lot of people just don't think that way. And they're perfectly fine with going through the motions, watching TV, waiting for the weekends, so forth. However, if you're a follower of Christ, I don't believe that mentality is really an option for you anymore, because in 1 Corinthians 6, the Bible says you are not your own anymore. You have been bought by God at a great price. And of course, that was the price of Jesus dying on the cross for you. And Romans 14:12 says that one day you and I will give an account of our lives before God. So this is really about the way you live your life. Not just going through the motions, and realizing that how you live your life, one day you'll give an account. And it is important before God. Now, I'm sure that some of you may remember a book called Don't Sweat the Small Stuff, and It's All Small Stuff. Remember that? Don't sweat the small stuff, and it's all small stuff. That is not true. It is not all. Now, we sweat over things that are small. We do that, but it's not all small stuff. If you or someone you love is going through a serious health issue, that is not a small thing. If you're having real concerns over one of your kids, over one of your grandchildren, that's not just incidental. That's very important to you. If you're having money shortages or you're up to your ears in debt, that is not small stuff. That's important. If you're going through a really difficult relationship with a coworker or a family member, those are real, very draining things. So no matter what stage in life you are, God is calling you to something higher and more significant than just simply going through the motions of life. And that's why I gave you a little homework assignment to write out what you want to be the top five priorities in your life. But you have to go beyond that. The next step is figuring out how you can construct your life, your time, your schedule in such a way that you will be living out your priorities, not just having them on a piece of paper. You have to have a plan to live out your priorities. Now, any of you guys that know me, well, you never see me without my notebook. I always have my notebook. My kids, they get real tired of this, but I always have my notebook. And what I did several years ago, and I tweak it throughout the years, is I've written down on paper, here are my priorities, here are my goals, here's the kind of person I want to become over time, here are the things that I think God has called me to, and just regular stuff that everybody does. And so I put that all down, and then I figured out a schedule and put that into a monthly schedule, which is built around my priorities and goals. So that if I just follow my schedule, then I will automatically be living out my priorities and be on my way to realizing my goals. So I don't get stressed over thinking, oh man, there's a big gap between what I say are the most important things to me and how I actually use my time, because I've already thought it through and put that into my schedule. Now, some of you, no doubt, are smarter than me in a lot of ways. Maybe you can keep everything like this just in your head. You don't have to have it written down. You don't have to keep track of it or anything. And as you go through each era of life, you can calculate that all in your head, how these things go. I can't do that. My guess is that most of us, unless we're very intentional about this, we're going to continue being at the mercy of our crazy and busy lives. All right, so we've reviewed the 6 big rock areas of life. We've talked about what era or chapter of life you're in right now and how much that could affect different energy and time that you need to put in different areas. We talked about not only writing these things on a piece of paper, but then trying to construct your life as much as you can around actually living out what you say and what you want to be your top priorities. So now I want to give you one particular challenge related to the most important of the big rocks, or the most important of the big areas of life. And it's this graphic right here. This has all the different aspects of the 6 big areas of life, but it has the spiritual one placed front and center. And I think most of us find that if we get that middle one right, that will bring some sanity, and that will bring some balance and purpose to all the other areas of life. And so that's really, I think, an easier way to maybe aspire to something like this graphic right here. And I think it's amazing how when people put Christ first and then try to pursue excellence or success or whatever you want to call it in the other areas of life, the other areas of life kind of fall into their correct descending order when you get the first one, when you get the main one right. All right, now to display my willingness to lead by example, I want to show you what I wrote down as my top 5 priorities in my life right now. Huh?
You spelled my name wrong.
Tina. That's the same person as right here, okay? It's not, there's not some other Jana somewhere there. All right, so I got God, I have my health, I have Jan, I have my kids, I have loving others and serving God. Now that looks pretty good, doesn't it? It looks pretty spiritual. I got God number 1. Does that always mean that God is number 1? It doesn't necessarily mean that I live these things out all the time, but it looks spiritual enough, so I put that on there, and it is important. I write that down. But as important as it is to put that on a piece of paper, it doesn't do much good if I'm not living out those priorities. For instance, if I spend way too much time working, and I spent about 3 decades of my life doing that, and I was trying to help people, but it was way, way out of balance. If I spend all my time working and then I don't have time to spend with God, or don't make time, if I don't exercise or eat right, if I don't pay attention to Jan, if I don't pay attention to the kids, and when I'm around other people, I'm short and irritable because I feel like I'm so busy, that list doesn't mean much, does it? In fact, it can lead to self-deception. I can write this up there and feel really good about myself. But the goal is to structure my life, my time, your time in such a way that we are truly living out what you put on that piece of paper that your priorities are. And the reason I put my health as number 2 is I have found that if I'm not healthy, I haven't had much illness, but when I go through some stuff, I realize I'm not much use to Jana or the kids or anybody else, if I'm in bad physical condition. Well, as Ephesians 5 challenges us, take great care, be intentional about how you live your one and only life. Most of us would readily agree with the thought that time flies. Winters turn into summers or springs, summers turn into fall, and before you know it. And Psalm 39 says, Lord, remind me of how brief my time on earth will be. Remind me that my days are numbered and that my life is like fleeing away. My life is no longer than the width of my hand, an entire lifetime is just a moment to you. Human existence is but a breath. Now, if you're young, in your 20s or 30s, why not get this right now? Why not try to figure this out now so you can live the rest of your life in a purposeful, intentional way? You'll make better life decisions because you'll make decisions based on around these priorities. Your life will have more meaning and impact. You'll have more balance in your life. If you're in your 40s or 50s, you've already gone through a lot of stuff already. And so you have a lot of life experience to reflect on, to identify what should be the most important things moving forward. And if you're 60 or older, what should your big five list look like in this particular chapter of your life? And for all of us, I think living a Christ-centered life, maybe just having this picture in your mind will help you the most. All right, let's stand. We'll have our closing prayer. Lord, each one of us here have been given a gift of life. And all of us here have known people whose lives were seemingly cut way shorter than ours. And they didn't have the opportunity or maybe, to really think these things through and to come before you and say, God, how do you want to use my life? What kind of person do you want me to be? In my job, in my family, in my recreational time, all these different things. How can I be the kind of person you want me to be? And many people didn't really have enough life runway to maybe develop some of these things. But we're here and we do have time. And Lord, I pray that some of us would take the time to reflect on this and that we would live Christ-centered lives, live lives that reflect what you've laid on our heart to be the most important things to us. Lord, I know it's a challenge. I know it's easy to stray and to be distracted and to not really be on the mark all the time. Lord, I pray that you would give us the strength, first of all, to think it through, to ask for your help, and then to really see what life is like when we live it more purposeful. And we pray for your help in that. In Jesus' name, amen. All right, everybody. Thanks for coming. We'll see you next time.